Perfect. We are live. Hello, hello, and happy Thursday to everyone. My name's Maggie Nielsen. I'm here with Purse Strings, and I have Christina Gamache here today. She's one of our Purse Strings approved professional, and we're going to talk about ways to improve your margins. So just to remind everyone, Purse Strings hosts this event every Thursday. We are all about providing financial education for women. Let's get that knowledge going, those wheels turning. But when you need a professional to put things in transaction or transition, we have top tier professionals who are willing, ready, and able to serve you. And we call those our Purse Strings approved professionals. So we have, financial advisors, attorneys, lenders, all that good stuff. And one of our Purse Strings approved professionals is Christina Gamache. Now you are not any of those items I named. You are a coach, which is so important in finance and building a business.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Maggie, for having me here. First of all, I have to brag on Purse Strings. Just in the last, I think I've only been an approved professional for maybe a month or two at the most. And it has been such a fabulous organization to really connect with other professionals and get my clients connected, which is so important, with people that I trust. And just the message that you guys have as far as, being fearless about your financials is so important, especially for women. So thanks for having me here.
We're so excited to have you. Yeah, I would love a quick introduction about you so the audience knows who you are.
Let's do it. So I'm Christina Gamache. I'm owner of Audax Wealth Management, and I'm kind of a weird one, if you will. So I'm a fractional CFO and a wealth advisor, whatever. Titles don't really matter, right? But what that really boils down to is I help women business owners get a hold of their finances, learn how to increase their profitability, learn how to pay themselves. I know it seems simple, but definitely not. And then learn how to get ready for that next chapter, whether it's retirement or starting a nonprofit or starting another business or on and on and on. I mean, you guys keep me on my toes. So that's what I do.
I love it. And for those who don't know, Christina is in Anchorage, Alaska, which I always think is, if you're not in the main 48, then I think it's pretty cool. Yeah. And so, yeah, we're excited to have you on here to talk about ways to improve your margins. Very, very business, kind of oriented. And the first thing out of we were talking about different questions to talk about and things like that. And the first one you prompted, which I thought was super interesting, is why revenue doesn't matter.
Oh, yes.
That's wild. I've never heard it. So let's go.
Revenue, I don't care. Okay, here, I got my shirt on for you guys today.
Big margins cannot lie. I love that.
Yes. There's a saying, I don't know who said it, someone smarter than me, but revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. And what that means is that I don't really care how much money you make. I get people all the time that show me their P&L and they say, look, I made $1 million last year, or I made $3 million. I say, that's great, but let's look at this. You didn't make any profit. You made zero profits. That's a problem. You've been in business for 10 years. That's a problem. And the reason that it's a problem, three reasons, okay? First of all, another company is not going to buy your business if you're not profitable. Why would they, right? It just doesn't make sense. As if I'm the buyer, right? It doesn't make sense. Second reason is paying yourself, right? A lot of business owners in this situation, when I look at their P&L, they're literally just taking whatever's left over at the end of the month and dumping it in their bank account. Or sometimes they don't even have another bank account. Sometimes it's all one bank account, right? No, yes. And so now you're spending way more money for your accountant or your CPA or your bookkeeper to separate all of those finances, to really clean things up at the end of the year. It's a lot of work, right? So you're missing out on a lot of tax savings too. Mm-hmm. That's another problem, right? And then the other problem here is that, now I've lost my train of thought. But the other problem is that, you are basically focusing on just that customer revenue number.
Mm-hmm.
right? You're just saying, hey, if I get XYZ in revenue, then I'm going to save the world. I'm going to do great things, right? But the problem is that as you grow and you grow quickly, your expenses are growing. You're not paying
Mm-hmm.
attention to your profit. All these things can spiral really quickly out of hand. So that's why revenue doesn't matter.
I'm going to put a quick plug in for a presentation we had earlier this week all about top tips for bookkeeping and the biggest mistakes. And some of those were not using a bookkeeper, not keeping receipts, and not separating those bank accounts. So if anyone's in that situation, please look back to that video because it is so important, and you are paying someone's time later to sort through it, which is more expensive than you want to pay. I'll tell you that much. But it's a lot like people, sometimes we see really, it's like keeping up with the Joneses almost. You spend as much as you make. So it doesn't, you don't make a profit. And so, speaking of this word profit, how do we measure it?
Yeah, that is another really tricky one, Maggie. There is no one way to measure profit. There's no one size fits all. I know that's kind of weird, right? But it really does depend on who you talk to. So you'll talk to
Mm-hmm.
fancy analysts who measure it this way. You'll talk to a banker who measures it that way. The important thing is to figure out what works for your business. Okay. And what I mean by that is, a consultant or a service-based business, my profitabilities can be measured quite differently than somebody who sells like pens. Okay.
Right.
It's also going to vary from industry to industry. So you want to make sure that you're comparing yourself to your peers, right? But some ways that you can look at profitability, check out your P&L,
Mm-hmm.
which is always tricky because the P&L, as you know, also known as your income statement, doesn't always match what's in the bank account. People are like, wait, where's my money? It says I should be making all this money, right?
Right.
But that is one way that you can just kind of have your thumb on the heartbeat of your business. There's also the gross profit margin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Easy peasy. Take your revenue, subtract your expenses, divide it by your revenue, right? And you want to have high numbers, please, not low numbers. And if you're a service-based business, you want to look at your net profit margin because your gross
Mm-hmm.
profit margin is going to be really great. And you're going to say, oh, look at me. But again, right, it's different. So you
Yeah.
want to look at the net profit margin. Um, Another big one that you won't find in any of your financial statements is your return on your invested capital. So
Mm. That's hard to
determining,
measure.
yes, that is very hard to measure. You're right. A lot of people, let's say you go into the stock market, you got
Mm-hmm.
$100, right? And you make $110, right? And you're like, great, I made money in the stock market, right? Most entrepreneurs that I know, they don't invest in the stock market very much. They do a little bit to diversify their portfolio, but most of them are invested in real estate or their asset is their business,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when they're looking at that, they're hoping not just for a measly 10% return, they're looking for 50 or 60% return, right?
Right.
So when you look at how much you've invested money wise into your business, are you going to pull out at least 50 or 60%? I hope so, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just go be an employee somewhere.
Right, right. And there's big things you can really compare that to, and little things, all your decisions, it's kind of, what's your ROI? Barb and I even went to a conference, and it was like, okay, we're going to pay all this money to go there, the hotel, the tickets, all that stuff.
Right.
Are we going to get those contacts or, purchases or something that returns on that investment? And so those are things you weigh constantly, the big things and the little things in business, I find.
Yes. Yeah. And with that, kind of on the same tangent, I'll just tell you one way that if you're watching this, you can go and increase your profitability right this very second. And that is by cutting all of those unnecessary expenses, right? Because if you download the last 12 months of your checking account or your credit card and you take a look and you see all these subscriptions, all these things that you're paying, but like, what is that again? Oh yeah, I used it once, right? Cut all of that out, because if it's not giving you that return that Maggie was talking about, it doesn't belong in your business, right? It does not belong in your business.
Yeah, you need it to give you back some time or some patience or something.
Right.
And so, what are some ways we can work on like improving our margins, or kind of, I know we've talked about some ways where we can kind of track like our different ways people track profits, but if we see that our margin is not there, how do we track that and make it kind of grow? I know that's a big money question, just tell us the answer, but
Yeah, well, I mean, the expenses for sure, right? Think about large corporations. Every year, if you ever had like an employee job at a corporation, right? Every year, the CEO comes down and says, we need to slash costs, right? That's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to increase their margins, right? So you should be doing the same thing as a business owner. You should be slashing your margins if it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing in your business, right?
And I think a way people really slashed, I'm sorry to interrupt, is
please.
Selling their office. Now that everyone can work at home, so many companies are selling their buildings, selling, the chairs, the desks, the heats, the lights, all those things that we pay. I mean, that's a huge, huge thing just to get everyone in this building and fund the building, fund the lunchroom, everything else. But now everyone's just at home. Put that on the employee.
Right. Well, can I tell you a story about a client? Yes. So, money is very emotional. It's tied to the root of who we are as people, right? Our past experiences. And I have a client that when we went through this exercise, it was very, it's difficult to go through it with anyone, to be quite honest, right? But she was having a hard time letting go of this rent that she was paying for an office that was a very nice office, and it was in one of the big buildings downtown. And I finally said, what is it about this? Like, no one's there. Like, no, your clients don't want to meet you there. I don't understand why we're still paying for this. And your landlord even said that they'll let you out of the lease. Like, this is amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Comes down to she didn't feel validated if she wasn't in an office, and if she didn't have her name on the door, and if her company wasn't out there for the community to see. She said, I feel like I can't run a real business out of my house. And I said, well, first of all, that's what I'm doing, right? That's what millions of people around the world are doing.
And but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It doesn't change who you are and what you're providing for your people. And then she called me the next month and she's like, I'm out. I moved all my stuff. I'm gone.
Perfect.
But just like that, the profit margin increased for that month.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars, right? But it is tied to a lot of this emotion that we have. Another big one that I talk about a lot is starting with what the customer is going to pay. Okay. So this is my analogy here. Hold on here. Okay. I've got a pencil and I've got a pen. Okay. And what most business owners do is they take these two items and they say, all right, it costs me, 50 cents to buy this pen. So I'm going to sell it to you, Maggie, for 75 cents. Okay. It cost me 10 cents for this pencil, so I'm going to sell it to you for 25 cents. Okay. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll buy it.
But if I asked you, Maggie, like, how much would you pay for this? Like, forget about how much it cost me to buy it, but how much would you pay for this? Would you pay $1 for the pen?
I could pay $1 for the pen.
You pay $1. Oh my God. Like, all of a sudden, I've increased my profit margin just by asking my client what they would pay. All right. Pencil. Do you even use a pencil? Like, nobody uses pencils anymore.
No, it's not mechanical. I don't have a sharpener. If the eraser's bad, I'm out.
No, erase it. Yeah. So there, done.
I won't even pay the 50 cents. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So it's a different mentality if you ask the customer what they would pay, and you'll be surprised. They'll either say that they will pay more for something, or they'll pay less for something that you're offering, right? So again, another tip as far as, what are you going to do to increase your profitability? Start with what the
Right.
customer is going to pay.
That's a great piece of advice. I mean, it makes a ton of sense because you're just kind of doing it by a mathematical, I do it, it charges this, I'll add 30% or I'll add 20% or whatever it is. But yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. And then you find out, like, why am I even keeping pencils in my store? Nobody buys them.
And you can put in more pens or something even better.
Right. Another thing I want to touch on for small business owners out there is the customer service. So,
Huge.
customer service is, I think, the advantage that small businesses have over big businesses, right? I mean, think about how many times you've ever been on hold. Oh my gosh, I hate being on hold.
It's some bad music blaring, and you're like, oh.
So, if you are a small business owner, you can own your customer's problem, and you can solve the problem, and you can turn that problem into a lifelong customer, into raving reviews, word of mouth referrals, because you own that. It may not have even been your fault, right? It may have been technology that screwed up, or it may have been one of your vendors, or who cares, right? The point is that the customer had a problem, and a large corporation would just send them to the call center and say, hey, we'll fix it, blah, blah, blah. But a small business owner, you can actually baby them. You can hold their hands, and you can walk them through this journey of redemption. And in that, create your brand awareness and increase your goodwill in the community.
There are places I've been where, I make the purchase, it's fine, but something was wrong and the customer service was so great. I'm like, these people are better than I thought, And you wouldn't think like someone returning something is going to be like,
Right.
oh, they're not going to love me anymore because they don't even want the product. But the service was so good. I know I can really trust them now. And that's always something that we're looking for. So it's like, oh, I'll go there again. If I have a problem, I know they'll always take care of me. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And then another question I had about, increasing margins, working with businesses, being a woman yourself, how often do you feel like the way you increase your margins is you have to charge more? Not even you
Yeah.
choose the price, but you just need to charge more. Do you see that often?
Yes. That's a loaded question, Maggie.
Yes, I know. All my questions are very loaded. That's just how it works.
But it's true. So going back to the pen and pencil analogy, a lot of, especially women owners, they will undercharge, and it is deeply rooted in their self-confidence. It is deeply rooted in what they believe about their service, right? And so that's another thing that I work with when I get a new client. We immediately look at their pricing. How much are you spending as far as time on XYZ service or this package? What is your time worth? Why are you discounting? Don't ever discount. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lady who's basically said, look, if you want to do good for this world, you cannot discount your price. It was the pandemic. Everyone's like, oh, people are losing their jobs. I can't charge full price. I just don't feel good about it. And basically she said, you charge what you're worth, you do the good work. And if you want to reinvest back into your community, then do that, right? Take those dollars and go give it to your favorite nonprofit, or go and, clean up the side of the street, or whatever it is. But you have a responsibility as a business owner to actually make money.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah. And I think we forget how great that turnaround can be of, and now I have an abundance of money and I can give back that way.
Yes.
versus, I will coach these people for free, where that hour could be $150 you're losing every hour. Where if you had a
Right.
couple more clients, boosted them up, you can earn a lot more money and just keep passing it down and making a fund or doing whatever, fills your heart there.
Right. Yeah. I always tell people, okay, there's the B word, right?
The
Budget.
budget,
The budget,
we
right?
don't
The
talk
B
about
word.
that.
Nobody
Anyway.
likes to say the B word. But I say your B word, your budget is your power,
Mm-hmm.
because you get to decide what every single one of those dollars does.
Mm-hmm.
And you can decide whether you go out to dinner, right? Like, I'm going to decide to go to this restaurant over that restaurant. That's control. That's power, right? Or I'm going to
Definitely.
take this dollar and I'm going to give it to this nonprofit. Such power in money, right?
Mm-hmm. Such power.
So yeah, let's use it for good, not evil.
Exactly. Yeah. And we talk about, it brings you power, it brings you choices, brings you, abundance of opportunities, which is really what we're looking for. And part of the reason why we go in business. And that's why we need these larger margins, is so we are making money and we are hitting those goals of why we started the business. We love the work that we do. I know you like inspire people every day with your work, but at the end of the day, you need to keep the roof over your head as well. And so that income is important, and that margin, really, as we talked
Mhm.
about.
Absolutely.
Do you have any other tips, tricks, pieces of advice that you want to share with our audience today about either their margins or their business? Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're looking at your P&L or any of those ratios we talked about, like your gross profit margin or anything, I'm not trying to make your eyes glaze over or like take you back to high school math class or anything like, not trying to do that. What I'm trying to say is that you use that information to make very strategic and pointed decisions in your business.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, you look at your P&L, you figure out how much you're paying yourself, right? And make it regular and fair. And then figure out what your goal for your gross profit margin is, or your net profit margin. Okay. And now we're going to back up. All right. So we've set a goal for, let's say, 15% for
Is that
next.
usually a percentage versus a number?
Yes, it is a percentage. Yeah.
And is 15 like an average
I would,
percentage?
it depends on the industry. Like if you're service based, you want to do anywhere from like 15 to 25%
Okay.
gross net profit margin. If you are maybe in manufacturing, or you make something, you sell something, right? Anything like 10 to 15% is probably good. If you are
Okay.
below 10%, call me. We
Those are
need to
great
talk.
numbers to know, because sometimes you don't know,
Right.
am I at 30? Is that good or bad? That would be really
Right.
great. But
Right.
yeah, 10, give Christina a call.
Yeah. 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 Ooh. But if you're, let's say 15% is your goal, right? And you've got all these expenses, you've gone through the budget, you've seen, okay, where every dollar's going, what's the revenue that I need to make in order to get to that 15% with all my expenses staying the same? Okay.
Mm,
What's that revenue? So does that mean that I need to increase my prices, or does that mean that I need to increase the number of clients or customers that I'm getting? Right. So
mhm.
all of this kind of flows together. You can see it's like the circle of life, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason why we look at all of this. It's not because, I'm mean and I'm like, no, we have to go slash prices or whatever. It's because I want you to carry your business forward and I want you to make
Mhm.
these decisions.
Yeah. And, we got to set those goals. It's always, as our coach always says, it's always a numbers game.
Hmm.
And so it's either getting those sales or upping your price, and hitting those markers every day to get that, 15% margin. Um,
Right,
it's a day in, day out grind.
right, exactly.
And so, you might have mentioned this in the beginning, but what services can you provide for business owners, or what do you provide them if somebody's watching this today?
Oh, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So I have kind of like three phases, if you will. The first phase, I have a foundations course where I walk people through the basics, right? And I teach them one-on-one because we didn't learn any of this in school, right? So I teach
But I
them
got the
one-on-one.
Pythagorean theorem down.
Oh, okay. I don't need that though.
They thought we might. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not good at geometry, actually. I'm really bad at geometry. But
It's
I've got a
hard.
foundations course that's 12 months long.
Okay.
I've also got financial planning, like a true financial plan. I'm not going to sell you anything. We're just going to walk through exactly what you need to get from here to there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got the daily integration. So if you need me, once a week to talk to your team for fractional CFO services, you want these spreadsheets. I've got so many spreadsheets, right? If you want spreadsheets, I've got them, right? But then I also do investment management. That's kind of my background comes from the broker dealer and the wire houses. So I still do that on the side, but very, I always say investment management, insurance, anything like that, they're just a tool that we can use to get you from A to B. It's just a tool. So that's
it
Audax
definitely is.
Wealth Management. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you've given a ton of great information today, some really actionable items to look at, which is awesome. And, really share how you can help our other women out there running their businesses. Sometimes I feel like we have all these professionals, but we don't know what they do or how they help us. So it's always helpful to be like, oh, okay, they'll really walk me through that, which is awesome. So I do have your email spinning across the bottom. Is there any other way that's best to reach out to you?
Yes. So I'm on LinkedIn, Audax Wealth. I'm also on Facebook and YouTube and all those places. I do all the things if I can. So pick your favorite social media platform and you can follow me.
Sounds great. She's also one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, so you can check her out, pursestrings.co. We thank you for coming on today and kind of wrapping up our entrepreneur boss business ladies month. Next month, we're kind of going into the meat of the sandwich generation and kind of that caregiver in the middle and talking how to protect yourself there and love, care for your loved ones. So we'll hope to see you all then. Until then, have a great week. Thank you.